Good morning, Wellness Warriors. Happy Wednesday, happy Wellness Wednesday. I hope you're having a fabulous morning already, and I hope you're having a fabulous week. It's a whole new month. It's a lot of things, and I'm excited to be here to talk about a topic that I didn't know very much about, and I'm excited to kind of learn about it together. So if you're just stumbling on my page, my name is Donna. I'm a mom. I'm a nana. I'm a girlfriend. I am a wellness advocate. I've spent my entire life battling. I say battling. I don't know if that's really the word anymore, with lifetime anxiety and depression. And I am studying for my Master of Science in Clinical Mental Health Counseling. I'm a jazzerciser, a runner, a line dancer. I own an online activewear boutique. There's so much about wellness that is such a huge umbrella. There's so much that we can talk about that applies. And so that's why a lot of times on Wellness Wednesday, we end up getting into mindset a little bit. Been on my mind. And I wanted to dig a little bit more into it because it's like a huge buzzword right now. So again, if you're just stumbling on my page, I encourage you to ask questions, to make comments, whatever. And sometimes Facebook shows me the things, sometimes it doesn't. So if I don't acknowledge you or answer the question, it's just because I didn't see it, and I will when I'm done. So if you saw last week's video on why you can't go home again, proverbially, then I hope you loved it. And if you didn't see it, I will drop the link in the comments so that you can check it out after I'm done here. And again, if you have anything to say, anything to contribute to today's discussion, please feel free to comment, ask questions. If I don't answer, it's because I didn't see it while I was live, but I will answer afterwards. And this week, we're going to talk about something that's been getting a lot of attention. Like I said, it's kind of a buzzword. It's called grounding. Now, if you saw my comment on my post, "Good morning, Miss Stacy," and the word grounding made you kind of twitch a little bit when I said you're grounded, but just for this episode, then you might be from my generation because grounding was a big thing. But this is not about your childhood experience. Exactly, Stacy. Stacy's like, please ground me. This is not like the grounding we're going to talk about today. Good morning, Miss Amanda. Is not like the grounding from our childhood experience. So if you got a little bit of a PTSD twitch there going on, just ignore it because this is not the same subject, I promise. So what is grounding? It's a huge buzzword right now. What is grounding? Ready for the grounding? Why is it a thing right now? And is it just a bunch of woo-woo? It's a weird word, right? Woo-woo. But let's face it, some things we look at it and we're like, what? So is it just a bunch of woo-woo, or can it actually benefit you? So that's what we're going to talk about today. And again, if you, as always, if you find it helpful, please feel free to share when I'm done. If you didn't see last week's video, I'll drop it in the comments, and let's get started. So what the heck is grounding? All right. So I had to, I've been working on this for a few days. Let's try that again. I was even able to pull some studies out of my grad school collegiate library on this. So it's not just a buzzword. There's been research that's been going on about this since at least 2012. But the basic idea behind it is physics. Yeah, we're not going to dig real hard into physics today because that's definitely not my wheelhouse. But basically it boils down to earthing relates to an electromagnetic exchange. Earthing is the other word for grounding. It relates to an electromagnetic exchange between the earth and other objects, which includes us. We are also other objects. Simple repeated tap on your arm while crossed will help to keep you grounded. Okay, so that's important, Stacy. Those are actually two different references. So I have talked about grounding before in terms of grounding yourself in the present. It's a mindfulness technique that helps to combat anxiety, overwhelm, things like that. And Stacy, that is really good. But that's what you're talking about. What I'm talking about today is a little bit different. And they use the word grounding in kind of as an exchange for the word earthing, which is a little bit less common. And grounding has more to do with these electromagnetic experiences. So what you're talking about is very real, and I've touched on it before, especially in cases of like trauma or fight or flight response, or like I said, overwhelm, high anxiety, anxiety attacks. We've talked about things that can keep you grounded to the present moment. But what we're talking about is actually grounding to the earth, if you will, or to nature. So earth has a negative charge, which is why objects with positive charges can be grounded by touching the earth. Good morning, Miss Patricia. So think of it as like, especially for those of us that grew up north, but I have a lot of static here in this house. The real static, not the proverbial static. We would, if we had a lot of static from dragging our feet across the carpet or whatever, we could go outside in the grass and drag our feet in the grass, and we could get rid of that static. You may or may not remember that as a kid. So earth has a negative charge. If we get too high of a positive charge, it can cause problems. Again, this is the theory behind the grounding / earthing that I'm talking about today. And like I said, grounding can mean a lot of different things, as Stacy pointed out. But in today's instance, grounding is, grounding is interchangeable with the word earthing, which is a less common word that we heard. I had not actually heard of earthing until I started digging into this topic. Grounding is the one that keeps coming up, especially since like every other post in my Facebook posts in my Facebook feed are grounding equipment. And guys, I keep getting notifications that my internet's trying to reconnect, so hopefully I'm not checking out too much here while I'm talking. So like I said, I've referred to it before, but in the context of interventions used in mental health treatment. This is not the same, but it could still be beneficial overall, and the two really could tie in together. So also known as earthing, this is a therapeutic technique that involves doing activities that electrically reconnect you to the earth or ground you, and they realign your electrical activity. Scientists theorize that free electrons transfer from the earth to us. So that's the basics of what I was just reading to you that was a little bit more in depth. So grounding or earthing has roots in traditional Chinese medicine, Aboriginal cultures, indigenous communities, and also with a gentleman by the name of Sebastian Kneipp. I think I'm pronouncing that right. I had to look it up because it's German. Who was a German priest who originated, he was considered the founding father of the naturopathic movement in the 1800s. And he frequently advised his followers to walk barefoot in nature at least 3 times a day for health. So as you can see, this goes way back. So the scientific support behind it is that there's a lot of research that's still emerging, but I did find things that go back as far as, like I said, 2012, maybe earlier, and much more is needed. But there's a growing body of research that indicates that grounding or earthing can reduce red blood cell clumping, which is beneficial for cardiovascular health. It can reduce muscle damage and pain after exercise. It can increase the physical function and energy, along with decreases in fatigue, inflammation, and depressed mood. And it can also improve thyroid function. So that's just like the tip of the iceberg. And there's a lot more research out there. And I do have some studies. I haven't dug completely into them. It was more like a skim type thing just to confirm what I was learning in my research. But I want to dig into this more. And you guys know I love to learn. So this is an example of a topic. You can throw at me a random topic, and if I can find enough evidence, and I also like to find like anti stuff as well as stuff that's in support so that I can give you guys more of a full picture. But I love to learn. I love to learn new things. Obviously, I wouldn't be in grad school if I wasn't. And so this is an example of a topic you can toss at me. And if I don't know anything about it, I'm going to dig in and I'm going to see what I can learn for myself. So now, some of these results relied on blood work before and after the grounding effective self-reports. So we have to count on people to be honest and be subjective about what they're experiencing before and after they use grounding. But there is a lot of evidence that shows changes in the body within several minutes of being connected to the ground or to a grounding product. So could this be a placebo effect? You know, that's one of the first things that people tend to go to if they've heard of the placebo effect. I grew up with a family member who had a rack of placebos in the bathroom medicine rack, because that person would decide that they had something they read about. The doctors couldn't find it, couldn't convince them. So they would give them a placebo, and a couple of days later, they felt better. So could this be a placebo effect? Yes, it could be. Because when a person takes a placebo or does a placebo activity, they may believe that they're receiving a beneficial treatment, but it can actually trigger psychological and physiological changes because our brains are very powerful. We've talked about this before, about the neuroplasticity of our brains, the power of our thoughts. We've covered this in a lot of different ways. So either way, whether you're having a placebo effect or it's actually working, if you're feeling better, then it's working, right? If your brain thinks you're doing better and your body thinks you're doing better, then it's working, right? So it doesn't really matter at that point if it's a placebo effect or not, as long as it's not something that's causing you any physical harm. That's kind of the way I look at it. But there is plenty of research that supports improved health with any time spent connecting with nature. So why not, right? Why not? So how do we do it? Did I cover everything? Oh, I missed one point, which was, yeah, guys, I have to have notes because I could never remember all of this just off the top of my head, especially when it's a new topic. So there's also a spiritual aspect here. So for those of you that believe in spirituality or believe in God or believe in Buddha or greater force or the universe or whatever, Mother Earth, whatever the case may be, whatever your beliefs are, greater force or Mother Earth or God's creation, which is kind of how I look at it. And so there can be a spiritual aspect here as well, depending on your beliefs. And this can kind of apply across the board to many different belief systems. So there's that too. So now, how do we do it? Well, it is grounding or earthing. Good morning, Miss Danielle, is considered most effective when your skin and the earth connect in some way, or your skin and water connect in some way. And that's natural bodies of water, not man-made bodies of water. So we do this by submersing ourselves in bodies of water. Again, natural bodies of water. So springs, lakes, ponds, oceans. We can do this by walking barefoot in the grass or the soil or the sand or even the mud, which might explain why people who spend a lot of time at the beach seem a lot happier, right? You can do this by lying flat on the ground or sitting with bare feet flat on the ground. This can happen through gardening or just pressing your bare hands on the ground, onto the grass, onto the soil. Outdoor activities, we've talked about this before. There's a lot of outdoor activities that bring you into contact with nature. Now, grounding is more specific to skin to earth or skin to water touch, but you guys, I've talked a million times about how getting out into nature can have a profound impact on our workouts, on our mood, on all of that. Getting out in the sunlight, getting out in the woods. I know for me personally, for years I didn't seek out the woods, but I grew up on 5 acres of land with an expanse of woods behind me. And the first time I went back up to Michigan after like 25 years, and I talked about that a little bit in my last Wellness Wednesday, I got into that woods behind my house and I was transported to like an entire different being. Like not just back to my childhood, but the peace and the release that I felt there in the woods, in the trees, incredible. And so I have come to appreciate the woods as a place where I can go and kind of retreat from myself, from everybody else, and feel recharged. So I'm not surprised at all to learn that this is really what grounding or earthing is all about. So outdoor activities can make this happen, just like gardening can make it happen. And I believe that even if you're not into digging your hands or your feet into the dirt, getting out into nature can give you some of this effect. So other ways you can do this, building a sand castle on the beach. Obviously, if sticking your feet in the sand or planting your butt in the sand can do it, then digging in the sand and building a sand castle can do it. Hunting for rocks or seashells or shark's teeth. So there's lots of different ways that you can get in touch with nature, Mother Earth, God's creation, whatever you want to call it. But it is considered most effective when your skin touches the earth or the natural body of water. So there are other things. There are these things called, this stuff called grounding equipment that I'm still a little bit iffy on. I've done some research. I'm not totally opposed to it, but there's grounding equipment such as mats. We've heard about grounding sheets, blankets, socks, bands, patches. These are all things for when you can't go outside because you have a disability or because the weather stinks. Maybe you're up north. There's no sun. There hasn't been sun in days, weeks. It's snowing. It's cold. You can't exactly go walk around barefoot because then you run the risk of frostbite. But these are items that you can plug into a grounded outlet, and these are made from conductive materials like silver and other things, copper things that facilitate the flow of electrons from that grounded plug. And every house has a grounded plug. Every house has, most outlets are grounded now. And I'm still not 100% clear on how this equipment works. And I'm certainly not going to use this forum to recommend a specific product if I haven't tried it. So there's much more research for me to be done on this. But I'll be honest with you. For me, I would rather take the natural approach as much as possible. Now, I'm going to disclaimer that. I don't know about y'all, but I grew up in Michigan and I could walk around barefoot pretty much as I wanted, as long as I stayed out of the blackberry bushes barefoot. In Florida, I'm not one to walk around barefoot. And it almost makes me wonder if that's not part of my problem. Because I don't get out there and I get out in nature a lot, but I don't do it. So while I'm afraid, because we have spiders and we have ants and we have sand spurs and we have all these things, the fact of the matter is that given a choice, I am going to choose a natural alternative of grounding where I'm actually out there in nature, touching the ground, sitting on the ground, getting into the water, whatever, over a product. If I was going to choose a product for grounding, I would probably start with a mat, because then I could put it at my desk, because I have a standing desk and I'm here at my desk most of the day. So if I was going to try a grounding product, it makes sense to me, especially since there's electricity involved. It's not going to be in a sheet. If you have experience with one of these grounding products, I would love to know more, but it's not going to be in the form of a sheet, because I'm going to be sleeping and I can't watch the electricity and I can't be aware of what's going on if something's not right, if that makes sense. So, but that's just me. I'm giving you this information so that you can choose what direction you might want to go to try this. But there are lots of things out there. They're made out of conductive materials. I would definitely do some serious research before you try any grounding equipment. And again, keep in mind that there are things that can happen when you're out there walking around barefoot. Okay, so let's talk about that just a little bit. First of all, if you're outside and you're doing this grounding thing and you're laying in the grass or whatever, you need to always be aware of your surroundings, because you're outside. So your surroundings may mean other people. It may mean animals. It may mean, like I said, sand spurs, fire ants, wasps. There are some reports that the increase of wasp stings in the risk of wasp stings, that's hard to say together, goes up about 7%, with people that are grounding or earthing. Well, that's because they're walking around barefoot. So you need to always be aware of your surroundings when you're outside. I'm willing to try this, even though I'm not a fan of being barefoot outside in Florida. This makes sense to me. When I go up north, like when we've gone to Salt Lake City for my activewear summits, or up in Michigan, a lot of times when I get out of where fire ants are really a thing, if I find a big old patch of grass, one of the first things I do is plop myself down on it. So clearly I have a proclivity for wanting to connect with nature. That's what that says to me. And I always find it very relaxing to walk around in beautiful grass, barefoot. It's just not something I do down here. So I'm willing to try it. I was kind of eyeballing a patch of dirt, exposed dirt from where Eric raked out the flower bed. And I was kind of, from all the overnight dew fall, maybe I'll go out there with my bare feet and just stand there for a few minutes. So the idea here is to spend, and the recommendation from most of the experts is to spend about 10 to 40 minutes a day, start small, doing some kind of grounding activity. And again, people who garden find a lot of stress relief and calm and joy in gardening. And now knowing this makes me wonder if it's got to do with that contact with nature and that contact with the soil and the earth. So again, always be aware of your surroundings when you're outside. Some people do experience negative side effects, and some of those are from the act of grounding, and some of those are from the grounding itself. So what that looks like is there's the obvious hazards that we just kind of touched on with outdoor activity, which include things like contact dermatitis, insect stings and bites. But then some people report kind of an unusual tingling or body sensation or general feelings of discomfort or unwellness when they first start earthing or grounding. If that goes away it's expected to go away fairly quickly, according to the experts, but it may not. And that's something to pay attention to. And then if you're feeling that way on a regular basis after you've tried this, then you probably maybe need to back off of it or start smaller. But there can be some negative side effects. It's just something to be aware of. I think the most common that I read about, besides the things that can happen just from being outside in nature and exposed to things like stinging insects, biting insects, etc., is the tingling. And then some people reported that they felt a tingling when they needed to go do it again after they had started doing it regularly. So does this sound like a lot of woo-woo? It absolutely does. But again, as I pointed out, even if it's just a placebo effect that makes you feel better, why not? If you're not getting hurt doing it, especially if you're using the natural alternative of this versus grounding equipment, why not? If it makes you feel better, even if it's just because you believe it's going to help, why not? A lot of times when I try new things aside, when I approach these new things, and I'm frequently quite surprised. So I can see where that could happen here as well. So when it comes to this grounding equipment, like I said, there's a lot of different kinds of things out there, and some of them involve electrical plugs, electrical cords, electrical wiring. So it's important that if you choose to use that type of equipment, that you do so safely, and that you follow the instructions. And if you're using a grounded outlet, they actually recommend checking the grounded outlet to make sure the wire, have an electrician come in, but checking the outlet to make sure that the wiring is correct and that everything's functioning properly, because you don't want it to cause problems when you are using a product that's for wellness that's plugged into an outlet that's not functioning properly. So there's a whole different level with those grounding products of safety hazard there that you have to pay attention to. I know, I feel like as I say this out loud to you, I'm like, okay, I might have just talked myself right out of that. But there are a lot of people that are using these products and are very, very happy with the results. So that's going to be a personal choice on your part, which is why I'm telling you all of the options that I can find right now. So another thing is, obviously, if you're plugged in, then during thunder and lightning storms is not the best time, when there's extra electrical charge in the air, is not the best time to be using these products. Because they are often made with conductive materials that help conduct electricity. That's essentially like jumping in the pool in the backyard during a lightning storm. You are increasing your risks if for some reason your house were to get hit by lightning and you didn't have that lightning protection. Basically, if you're using grounding products that get plugged in, it's not something you want to use during a thunder or lightning storm. There was one I read about that I was like, there's no way. And that had to do with somebody who couldn't go outside, but sticking a metal pole out the door into the dirt and it being attached to a wire lead in their body. I'm like, no. Okay, that sounds like an invitation for disaster. So that is definitely something. And like I said, I'm not necessarily recommending any of these products. What I am going to tell you is do your research. You need to do it with caution, right? So like I said, it's a very unusual topic. It's extremely, I'm not one to jump on a bandwagon, but I've been hearing more and more about it. More and more these types of products jumped in my feed. So it occurred to me that perhaps you all might be hearing more about it and seeing more about it and wondering about it as well, since it's become such a buzzword. So here's my challenge to you, and we're actually going to wrap up kind of on time today, but here's my challenge to you. Try it naturally, because that's what I'm going to do. At some point between now and next Wednesday, I'm going to walk out there. I'm going to be brave. I can do this in my bare feet. Okay, maybe I'll walk out there in my shoes and then get in the soil in my bare feet. And I'm going to find a patch of soil or grass. Ants aren't out really heavy just yet, thank God. I'm going to find a patch that seems fairly safe, and I'm going to stand in that patch of grass or soil for 10 minutes. I'm just going to try it, and I'm going to see what happens. And I'm going to try it maybe for a couple of days. But I am going to try it, so I'm going to encourage you to try it naturally. So again, what does that mean? That means go for a walk barefoot. You don't want to go on the grass or in the dirt. Go in the sand on the beach. If you're up north, maybe if you have some indoor plants, messing with those indoor plants and the soil that's in them might actually help, kind of like gardening. Or if you have an outdoor grow box that you can dig out and put some fresh soil in, that type of thing. If you're game to try grounding equipment, then go for it. But I'm just going to tell you to, again, use it safely, follow instructions, and do your research. But I am going to challenge you, because I'm going to do it, is to try it naturally. It's not going to cost anything to get out in nature if you have that ability. Again, if you're up north and you can't make contact with the earth, then maybe you can go into the woods and touch some trees. Now it really sounds like woo-woo, doesn't it? But here's the thing about woo-woo. Again, back to the placebo effect. If we believe that it will work and we approach it with a positive attitude, then even if what we're getting is a placebo effect, if it's making us feel better, it's working, right? And again, there's so much evidence behind nature as a natural healing agent. Like I said, getting out in the sun, getting out in nature, getting, in my opinion, worth a try. So my challenge to you is get out there in nature and try it. 10 minutes, couple days this week, earthing, putting your feet into sand or dirt or grass, not man-made, natural. If you're a swimmer this time of year and you want to go get into the springs that are 72 degrees year round, go jump in the springs and immerse yourself in a natural body of water. But it will cost you nothing to get out in nature. And if you're in Florida, again, be mindful where you're putting your bare feet, because I'm certainly going to. Again, and I can't stress enough, if you've done this before or you decide to try it, drop a comment. Send me a message. Let us know how it went, how you felt, if you noticed a difference. Did you do it one day? Did you do it 3 days in a row? Did you experience that tingling when you felt like you needed to go out and do it again? I'm curious to know more, and there's only so much that reading and research can do for us if we don't actually give it a try. So get out there. It'll cost you nothing to get out there into nature. But again, just be mindful of where you're putting your feet, where you're putting your hands. And then, like I said, give it a try. Comment on any results or thoughts you have. So just keep in mind, again, natural hazards. All right, so just a few reminders. If you choose equipment, do your research, follow the instructions, use safely. Don't use during a thunder or lightning storm. There is no proof, and I have to do this disclaimer, there is no proof that that grounding or earthing is going to prevent disease. And it is absolutely not intended to replace modern treatment. But I got to tell you, the Aborigines and the indigenous communities, and the traditional Chinese medicines, see, Amanda, you're doing it already. It feels good on your feet, but have you ever noticed if there's any other kind of impact for you? Or maybe you would know if you do that every day, maybe you would notice if you didn't do that for a couple of days, you might be like, I haven't been walking to my mailbox barefoot lately. Maybe that's the problem. Thank you for sharing that. So I believe that these indigenous cultures, these people that have been living off of the earth or living with the earth, if you will, for years and years, that they were onto something. I truly believe that they were onto something. And so even though there's no proof that it prevents disease, and see, Amanda, that's amazing. And everybody can use a little sense of calm. So I really appreciate you sharing that information. But I believe they were onto something. And even like any other wellness activity, you can certainly augment modern treatment with it. And if it means down the road that we get to tweak our meds or whatever other treatments we're doing because these more natural, mindful wellness type practices are helping us, then there's nothing wrong with that either. But it is not, there's the disclaimer, it is not intended to prevent disease. There's no proof that it does that, and or to replace modern treatment. But again, if you have good results, even if it's the placebo effect, who cares? The result is still the result, as long as you're not getting hurt in the process. And lastly, nature has always been considered good medicine. There's plenty of empirical research to back that up. Yes, I'm a grad school student, so empirical research is first and foremost on my mind. And I was excited to find some of these studies that were coming up that were mentioned in articles were also in my collegiate library. Not all of them, but because I'm studying for my Master of Science in Clinical Mental Health Counseling, most of the stuff that I have access currently to in that library is related to those fields. So sometimes some medical stuff I can't even get to because I'm just I don't have access to those databases. So again, nature's always been considered good medicine. So even if you're not into sticking your feet on the bare floor, on the bare ground out there, get out there in nature, enjoy some sunshine and some fresh air. Maybe get into the woods, hug a tree. I can't believe I just said that. Because like I said, whether it's woo-woo or it actually benefits you, if you do it and you feel better, it's worth doing, y'all. All right, that's all I have for today. Stay tuned because I'm going to keep digging into this grounding thing. And I may, down the road here, try a grounding mat for my desk. That's probably as far as I would go with actual equipment. I want to try it the natural way first because I'm always about the natural way first with almost anything. I'll keep you posted. You promised to keep me posted. And if you think this will help somebody or you found it helpful, please share. I hope it was an interesting little topic for you today. And you are officially ungrounded. You may go on about your day. You may have your privileges back because you are officially ungrounded from Wellness Wednesday. I love you. I hope your day is fabulous. I hope they be well. Bye.